Howdy y'all, welcome back to Orr's Sawmill. Today we're going to be sawing these 20-inch red pine logs we got off a local landowner. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. We're going to be making some 1x8s out of most of this. This is going to be for tongue groove paneling later on down the road. We got a bunch of orders to make for custom homes. So we're gonna try to get through this pile in the next 2 days. We'll see how far we get. Then after we finish this, we're gonna go to start working on the pile in the back there, which is the same stuff. We're just gonna keep sawing it. We got a ton of orders to do for shiplap and tongue and groove, so we're just gonna try to knock out as much as we can this week. And then next week we'll start on some different lumber to keep the inventory rolling out. So these logs are fairly clear for being red pine. They're big plantation pines, so the knots are pretty solid, so they make very beautiful shiplap, and everyone's loved it so far, so we're just gonna keep making more. So if you guys want to come with me, we're just gonna go through this and I'll tell you step by step what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. The first log here on the mill is 19.5 inches in diameter at the base and around 17 inches in diameter at the top of the log. So on a log this size, I tend to take the slab off, and then I'll take a 1-inch board just under it, just to give me an idea on how wide at boards I can get out of this log. I usually just eyeball it, and I can get pretty close to the size board that I want. So typically on a log this size, the two sides usually match in the amount of cuts you'll take off. So on the first side we took off 2 cuts. On the second side we usually will take off 2 cuts. And then the log will be close to the diameter that we want to shoot for. So you see here I will be cranking down the log leveler. This mill has a log leveler built into it, and it's a hand crank. So now that I got 2 sides squared, the third side I already know what I'm shooting for. So in this log I'm shooting for a 1x10 camp. This is a fairly large red pine, so we're going to get some pretty nice 1x10s out of it. So if you look closely here on the side, you can see that there's a slight taper to the log. That's the taper we were trying to cut out earlier. You don't want to cut across taper that much because it'll put stress in your board. So we want to try to match the grain throughout the whole length of the board. But it's hard to do when there's almost a 2.5–3 inch taper over 12 foot. So we do the best we can and hope for the best on the boards. So this log actually has fairly small knots for a red pine, and they're actually quite solid. If they were loose knots, they would have a dark ring around them, but these ones have more of a sap ring around them, so they're a lot more stable for making tongue and groove or shiplap out of them. So the landowner I got these logs from, I believe they pruned their trees when they were younger. So when you prune your trees, the limbs don't fall off naturally, and so you actually cut the limb off when it's alive yet. So it creates a more stable knot for future woodworking projects. So since the shiplap we're going for is knotty pine, we just cut straight down the cant. Normally if you wanted better furniture grade lumber, you wouldn't cut
straight down the cant. You would rotate the log, flip it 3-4 different times and cut from each side to get the best, most uniform boards. But for the purpose of the 90 pine, shiplap, and tongue and groove, we just cut straight down the cant. So after we cut down the cant, the next step is that we're going to have to edge all the boards from the first few logs. So what I typically do when I'm cutting a bunch of the same size logs, I'll cut 2 or 3 logs and then I will edge the boards that came off those logs because they're going to be uniform and the same size. So it's a lot easier to just edge them on the mill and get a perfectly square board off of that. So for the first cut on these ones, I'm going to cut it at 10 inches. Actually, I'm cutting it at 10.5 because I allow for shrinkage, and then I will trim them square after they are dried, because when they dry they actually move a little bit, so I leave about 1/4 of an inch for me to work with to get them square before I can use them or turn them into shiplap. So now that I made that first cut at 10.5, I go through and I sort out the ones that are clear or close to clear, and then I will flip the worst side up and redo them again. So this next cut will be at 8 1/4, and the reason it's not 8.5, like a 1/2 inch that I did on the 10 inch, is because 8s don't tend to shrink as much, and I trim them down to about 7.5 when I'm done, so I don't need the full 1/2 inch to clean up. So once again here I gotta sort out the ones that I think are going to be clean enough for turning into shiplap. So I take out about 4 or 5 that are clean, and then I will do one more cut. This cut will be made at 6 3/8 to give me a little bit of wiggle room. The 6s, since they're not as wide, tend to warp or turn a little bit more than the 8s when they are dried in the kiln, so I give myself a little bit more width to work with. All this is just from doing thousands and thousands of board feet, and I just know when the log is gonna move or shrink. So these are winter cut logs. They tend to shrink less than the summer cut logs. There's a lot less pitch and a lot less moisture, and then also they're a little more stable, but they still do move. Well, we're going to do one more log here. Just going to let you guys watch, and I hope you enjoy watching.